Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Eddie Labour, Committee Chairman. Can I do apologies for absence first, please?
We've had apologies from Councillor Deducci and Councillor Catra, and Councillor Stead and Councillor Duncan are substituting.
Good, thank you very much. Welcome to the familiar faces again. Declarations of interest, please, Councillor Morgan.
I have an interest in item 11 and will be leaving the meeting.
Okay. On the basis of that, I'm going to reverse the running order and I will take 12 before 11. It will just make for a neater run of the night. So 12 will come before 11. The agenda we are taking is the one that was published by the Head of Planning. All the items are in Part 1 and the only change is that change to the running order that I just identified. There are minutes of the meetings held on the 8th and 25th of April, no, 6th and 25th of April, if I could read, in the bundles. Can I take those agreed, please? Thank you very much. Right, I only have one petition item tonight. That is the first item, item 6. For a petition item, petitioners have the right to address us for 5 minutes, 4 minutes green, 1 amber, and then we get to red, we stop. And given the site in question, I suspect you may well be familiar with our processes. Press the red button when you come up to speak. Tonight's meeting is on the Council's YouTube and is being broadcast. The microphones and the cameras are towards this end of the room, so those in the audience are not visible apart from when you're speaking at the table, when you will be on camera. Can I please ask that you speak clearly into the microphone so it does come out? Could I ask that all mobile phones please are switched off, or at least to silent, to avoid disturbing the meeting. If the fire alarm goes, I think you all know the drill. We're either going that way or that way. But I'm sure we'll get there pretty quickly. Tonight's voting members of committee, Councillor Stead, Councillor Graham, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Higgins, Councillor Morgan, Councillor Oswald, Councillor Duncan and Councillor Morse. If they can't make up their minds and they manage to tie a vote, I'll have to make mine up. They've only done that to me once, I think, in recent years. Highways tonight is Peter Loveday, Neil McLennan is presenting, James Rod, the Head of Planning, offers me advice, Luke Taylor from Democratic Services is my clerk, and Roisin Hogan is our planning lawyer. That's enough of the introductions. I'm moving straight into item 6, land adjacent to 68 Knoll Crescent, Northwood.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks permission for a pair of semi-detached dwellings with associated parking and amenity space within an area of land to the area of 41 and 43 The Drive. The house would be accessed off the southern arm of Knoll Crescent. That's here. And this is constrained so much you can see that there is an area of green belt here. The proposed development is considered to constitute backland development in the light of changes in policy and guidance in relation to backland development, and given the harm that would be caused to the character and appearance arising from this development, it's considered that development would be unacceptable. Furthermore, 2 appeals have been dismissed in 2014 and 2016 concerning dwellings on this site. In both cases, the Planning Inspectorate supported the Council's stance that such development was inappropriate in principle. And this is the consented outbuilding, consented under permitted development. You can see it's for a swimming pool and partially constructed on site. This is a close-up of the site. This is the proposed 2-storey pair of buildings, semi-detached buildings, proposed in the back garden. And I've got it's an aerial photo. You can see it's all greenery at the moment. It's access into Knoll Crescent, and there's some pictures of the Knoll Crescent and the garden. And that's the swimming pool building that's currently under construction. This area currently forms an essential break in the built form and an area of amenity that contributes to the street scene. There is also a turning area for vehicles which serves to emphasise its openness. The loss of this area to further buildings would harm this openness and the amenity of the area. Similarly, the open aspect from the rear of properties in the drive, including the door, donor property and number 41 would be lost. The proposal would therefore fail to retain the open and green nature that is characteristic of the area. The scheme is therefore unacceptable in principle, is considered contrary to planning policy and is recommended for refusal for the reasons set out in the report. Thank you.
Okay, I have a petition on this one. Mr. Wright, you come up to the table, press the red button when you're ready and we'll start to time it. There is an addendum. I'll deal with that in a moment.
Good evening. I'm here representing over 120 petitioners, and these are local residents, very local residents to the site you've just seen. All residents have been living there really over 20 years, devoted almost 25 years of their lives to Northwood, and they want to protect it further. These are residents that were almost knocking on our door to sign this petition against this development. This committee has already refused 4 previous applications to build on this land, for 4 houses, for 2 houses, for 1 house, and a variation on that. And as identified, the planning inspectorate has dismissed several appeals already. Reasons why this application has been rejected before, we believe still apply now. Please don't be fooled by the title, land adjoining 68 Knoll Crescent. It is still the private back garden belonging to number 43 The Drive, where there's never been permission to build homes before. This application would constitute backland development. Please also don't be fooled by the swimming pool building that sits on the site now. Built hastily, probably never intended as a swimming pool, to be honest. An obvious attempt to get round the previous decisions made by this committee, we believe. And we think they're trying to change the purpose by building a swimming pool and then trying to repurpose it into dwellings, which goes against the actual certificate of planning of permitted development. Access and parking for residents would become even more difficult than it is now if this went ahead. There's an outstanding proposal at the moment in Knoll Crescent for on-pavement parking, but any benefits gained from that would be short-lived if more houses were built. Despite the owner's attempts to gain access illegally with earth-moving vehicles, there's no access point across the pavement and no current dropped curb in Knoll Crescent. The owners have made no attempt to make good the pavement and wall that Deacons, their garden contractor, have destroyed with their own digger vehicles when they entered the garden to remove trees and shrubs, an indication of the disrespect they have for our neighbourhood. This application conveniently also leaves space to the south end for potentially other applications, again attempting to cynically bypass previous decisions made by this committee. The application does not address the drainage that's been raised before, and it will certainly not help the lower water pressure issues that's currently experienced by some of our neighbours in Knoll Crescent. As identified by the Council and Planning Inspectorate, the trees and greenery do form an integral part of the character of the area, and despite many trees being removed already, there are still protected species that are vulnerable. We appreciate the time and the effort the Council has invested in this submission, and we hope the committee will refuse this application again. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members have any questions? For the applicant? For the petitioner, sorry.
Yes. Thank you very much for coming along and speaking to us. We do appreciate that. Can you tell me, I wasn't quite clear, is there access to this site through that? Are you saying that they've taken down that and trees and made an access?
They opened up the fence and made the access and basically put that sign up that's there. And they actually put some signs up claiming to have permission from the council to access the land themselves. Signs that we have learnt since that they're actually illegal signs. They're acting, claiming to have permission to go across the curb, which they don't. There was a lady from the Asbit team. What was her name? Claire Shepherd from the Asbit team actually came out to enforce the fact that they don't have access from the Crescent.
Can we? I'm going to have to pull that there at that point. I'm not wishing to curtail debate, but we're sliding across into something that I'd rather leave for other places on another day.
Sure.
And I think committee know where I am. Okay. I thank you very much indeed. Is there anyone here on behalf of the agent or the applicant? Sorry, could you just turn that microphone off for us? Sorry.
Apologies.
Anyone here on behalf of the agent or the applicant? Okay. There are no ward councillors present, but I do have a note from, there's a note in the addendum that refers to an additional objection from local ward councillors. Councillor Scott Stephen Digby has written expressing his support for the committee report, and that the proposal would be out of context, dominate the street scene, is overly dense and unneighbourly. That rather sums it up. Councillor Oswald.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Just one question, and I will second that, but that blue fencing and those barriers, are they being removed by officers, or are we going to take in enforcement action?
7.21 in your
Fine, thank you
paper
very
will refer the answer.
I just wanted to make that, I know it's here, I just wanted to make it known.
It's being looked at.
Thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm also in favour of the officer's recommendations in refusing this application. However, is there anything that we can do that can stop the current building that's going up as a swimming pool to be converted into anything else?
Can I refer again to 7.21 in the report? I think, and I'll leave it at that. I have a proposal and a seconder that we accept the officer's recommendation to refuse this one for the two reasons stated on page 10 of the report. All those in favour of refusal, please clearly show. Thank you. That one is refused. Good. I move to item 7, rear of 33 Chester Road, Northwood, on page 25 of the committee report. Neil.
Thank you. Planning permission is sought for the erection of a 2-storey, 3-bed detached dwelling house with associated parking, amenity space, and vehicular crossover on land associated with access from Hawes Close. The proposed dwelling is in the back garden of 33 Chester Road here. The site is not previously developed land as defined in the NPPF, and there is no presumption in favour of development of such land. The site is also within the Northwood area of special landscape character, as you can see on the constraints plan. The site is not there is no adverse impact upon the amenity of adjoining occupiers, and the layout, that's the proposed house, would provide a satisfactory living environment for future occupiers. However, it is considered that the proposed development, by reason of its rear garden location, would result in an incongruous form of development which would be out of character with the existing open character and appearance of surrounding properties, and would thus be detrimental to the visual amenities of the surrounding area. As such, the proposal would be contrary to planning policy and is recommended for a refusal for the reasons set out in the report. Thank you.
The head of planning will make a minor change. I know you read it off what was in the report, but the report had an error we hadn't picked up.
In the summary, it should say Northwood area of special local character rather than landscape.
We had it, yes. It's invented a whole new character of something there.
It is correctly spelt out in full in the refusal reason that it's Old Northwood area of special local character.
But we had just found a new designation, which... Right, Councillor Higgins.
It's no brainer really. Go with officer's recommendation.
Okay, in that case, all those in favour of refusal, please clearly show. Thank you, that one's refused. Item 8, 98 Exmouth Road, Ruislip.
Thank you. This application relates to a 2-storey terrace property located in Exmouth Road. The application seeks permission to reduce and modify an existing unauthorised conservatory that is the subject of an enforcement notice. If I just flick through the plans, should we go to the photos? I'll go back to the plans after I've shown you what's there at the moment. So that's what we have at the moment. So there is an existing extension that this is built on the end of. Both adjoining properties have similar size extensions, and obviously you've got this massive conservatory on the end, clearly unacceptable. We've authorised and issued an enforcement notice. If I go back to, it's not particularly well built either. If I go back to, so as you can see, I think they retain this bit of the conservatory, and we lose this area that is currently the existing thing, and they reduce the height and width of it, so it's in line with the existing extension. Although the combined depth is approximately 6.35 metres and still in excess of HDAS guidance, given the single-storey extension to both the adjoining properties, it is not considered that the proposed reduced conservatory would harm neighbouring amenity. In terms of appearance, the reduced conservatory is considered to be subordinate to the original dwelling and is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions set out in the report.
Planning would like to
So
make
condition
some
1 is very important with regard to this report, because this sets out timescales to remove the unauthorised structure and do alterations and replace it with a much smaller conservatory. The council's, the legal advisor has said that it may be possible to strengthen this condition, so can I have delegated authority, if members agree, the report, so that I can, after committee, take advice from the council's planning legal team.
And that may happen further again. So I have two hands on this side. I go with Councillor Flynn, then Councillor Higgins, then Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at the plans and looking at the photographs, to me it's fairly clear that this is a considerable improvement on what is already a rather too dense extension based on the photographs we've seen. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a significant improvement, so I'm happy to support officers on this.
Councillor Higgins.
I have a problem with it, actually. I still have a problem with it, because I think that conservatory should be more into the middle of the garden. If we go to can we go back to the photo, unsightly photo? I just find that seems to be that's where obviously we have this lovely dome, but where this other bit of the conservatory. Can you see how it's blocking the neighbours? I want to know. It looks like it's. I don't know. It doesn't look. It's very close to the fence. I mean, have we moved that? Have we actually moved it away from the fence, or are they keeping the existing building? So the plans don't show it to me enough. You can see that it's bang on the fence line.
I am familiar with the original inspector's appeal decision, which was basically two issues: that it's too big, attached to secondary extension.
We all agree with that one.
But there was also a concern over overlooking of one of the neighbours, which is actually addressed through this proposal.
Okay, fine.
So there's kind of two improvements that are brought through in this proposal.
Well,
it's much smaller, and it does overcome the overlooking issue that this currently causes, but the proposal's designed so that there isn't a problem in that regard.
On that, I'll second it.
Yeah, thank you. It was just about strengthening condition 1. Were you proposing to reduce the time scale or
it
what?
It was the actual reason that I should probably bring in the council's legal officer.
Well, no, hang on. I think we can answer the member's question quite succinctly. No, you weren't proposing to reduce the timescale. It's still 3 months and...
Yeah, it was still 3 months and 6 months. It was just ensuring that...
Better and tighter wording.
The reason would be scrutinised if we serve... So if they breach that condition, that's what's going to be scrutinised at appeal, and the reason for the condition needs to be absolutely spot on.
Okay, well, we'll leave that between
that's why the legal officer...
We'll let the lawyers work that one out. I think that's beyond us.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
I think everybody's done. So, did I have a proposer? I did. Councillor Flynn. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Higgins. All those in favour of approval, please clearly show. That one's approved. I move to... we're going. We're in Ickenham now, we need to move to Ickenham. 66 The Drive, which is item 9, and this is an outline application.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal seeks outline permission to demolish the existing dwelling house and to replace it with a 2-storey detached dwelling with habitable roof space for use as 5 flats. That would be 4 2-bed and 1 3-bed flats, with associated amenity space and parking. All matters relating to the detail of the proposal are reserved for later consideration. So the plans we have are indicative only, but we think demonstrate that the scheme with that number of units can be built on this site and meet the relevant policies and standards. The applicant's application site is a substantial plot that is of sufficient size to be capable of accommodating a new development of this kind, subject to compliance with accepted policy, guidance and all other material considerations. The application site is within the established built-up area and where residential infill development has been deemed acceptable. You can see from this site that it's opposite an area of Greenbelt. And 12 neighbouring properties were consulted along with the Ickenham's Residents Association. There have been 9 objections received in total. That's now 10 objections, received an additional one today. However, it didn't raise any issues not already raised and covered in the report. Notwithstanding the above, the proposal has been assessed against current policies and guidance for new housing development in terms of the potential effects of the indicative layout, and this is the revised site that's existing. This is a revised footprint. However, notwithstanding the above, the proposal has been assessed and the indicative layout on the character of the surrounding area, the potential effects of the indicative layout on the character of the surrounding area, the potential impact on residential amenities of neighbouring and nearby occupiers, and on highways-related matters have all been assessed and considered acceptable. The layout plan submitted is only illustrative and intended to simply demonstrate a scheme of 5 units could be policy compliant within the site. The plan was revised at officers' request to include 8 parking spaces at the front and a 1.5 metre set-in from all boundaries. An additional objection, I'm sorry, we covered that. It is considered that the principle for the residential redevelopment is acceptable in compliance with relevant policy guidance and standards, and is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in the report. So there's an aerial photo of the existing house and the local street. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Stead, I see a hand that far down the table. I'm going to have to go down there.
It was my arm, Chairman. It's still there. Is this not garden grabbing?
I think not, but...
No, this would be treated as an infill development proposal. Garden grabbing would be if they did, for instance, an access road down the side of the existing house and then built in the rear garden. So we treat this as infill, which is considered acceptable. However, the 10% rule applies when we're demolishing existing houses and infilling between with regard to flatted development proposals, and it's set out in the report that that the 10% rule wouldn't be breached. I did carefully read the additional letter that came today, and what was mentioned in that is that the objector pointed out that if you took a different approach to the 10% rule and went a kilometre in one direction all the way to the start of the drive, you might go over 10%, but that's not how we do it. We take this property as a midpoint, and taken as a midpoint, the 10% rule definitely isn't breached. So it is set out in detail in the report, but the principle of development is acceptable, and because it's only an outline application with all matters reserved, there's not actually a lot members can consider here, but what we did want the applicant to demonstrate is that the maximum number of parking spaces, because we would normally look at 1.5 spaces as a maximum, could be achieved, which would be 8 spaces, because we would seek the maximum at this site. We wouldn't seek any less than the maximum, but as members can see, 8 spaces can be accommodated, we feel, at the front of the site.
Councillor Graham.
Yes, Chairman. I'm generally unhappy with this application, but we are looking at an outline planning application here, and it says quite clearly that the layout plan submitted is only illustrative. And I would hope that when and if this comes back to us, which it probably will in fullness of time, that we look much more closely at all sorts of aspects of this, because as matters stand tonight, I'm going to abstain on this application.
Councillor Higgins.
On the same sort of note, really, I'm a bit fearful of this one, and what I want is some assurances that what we agreed this evening is not going to come back and say, oh, well, you agreed that, councillors, and your hands are tied. I do not want to be seeing that. I also agree, I think that this is, at the moment, I think it's too large. And I think the plan and the parking, I'm glad that we've emphasised high end, but I think, and I have no argument, I cannot argue this case, but it should actually be 2 per flat, because of where it is and the road that it's in and the price of these properties. They're not going to have 1 car, I can guarantee that. So then you are then dispersing. And if you look at the bulk of this, I don't even know what number it is really, 66, then you look at 68, how small that is. I mean, there is it's a big It's a big difference in property. So then you're encouraging 68 then to do exactly the same thing and encourage another big building. And the other thing is that, what is that at the back of the land? Is that some other outbuildings or something? And are they going to be taken away, or are they going to then further be used for something else that we don't know, maybe a small granny flat or something else? So I'm just, there's lots of issues here that I'm not really, I'm concerned about.
I think the key assurance you are seeking is that the illustrations that are before us tonight that we're not actually considering are not going to then come back as, well, you've agreed that as the outline of where we can put it, you're kind of tied to that. Yes. Am I summarising correctly? James, perhaps you care to comment for me?
The application is just for the demolition of the existing building and the erection of a replacement building with flats. So there isn't a proposal for anything that involves altering or replacing the outbuilding.
Yeah, but then... No,
I think what the councillor's concerned about is that the outbuilding we'll obviously have to consider when we come to it. The councillor's concerned, and I think it's valid, that when we come to consider the actual replacement dwelling, that we don't get presented with, well, you were happy with that as the bulk of it when you approved the outline, therefore you're kind of stuck with that, when members haven't actually considered that. Exactly. Am I... Yeah. If they got...
Yeah, I mean, it is purely an indicative drawing. It's not an approved drawing in that sense, so they still need to demonstrate that they can comply with relevant policies and come up with a scheme that we think is acceptable in terms of its impact on the character and appearance of the area and on the amenity of neighbours. Sorry.
I don't really like labouring a point, but the fact is that you're saying that you can get X amount of properties on this site. So on the assumption that you are doing that, are you doing that on the existing building, or are you doing it on this drawing? That's what I'm concerned about. It's not being presented in the right way. If you're saying to me, they want to build some flats on there, can they have some... I don't understand why they're doing it this way as well, and that makes me suspicious as well. But it just seems a very backward way of doing it, and it also seems that there is a drawing outline there, so you've based that on which scale to get these 4 2-bedroom and 1 3-bedroom flat. I need to know that.
Well, we asked them to show an indicative drawing that could accommodate that size of development and still comply with policies in terms of 45-degree rules and impacts on neighbours.
We looked at the footprint proposed, and we're comfortable that if you had minimum mayoral floor space standards for the flats proposed, you wouldn't need to build a bigger building than proposed. So if they come in, for the sake of argument, with a 100+ square metre flats, which is clearly considerably more than mayoral standards, and that then leads to a much bigger building, I'm comfortable you could refuse that at reserve matter stage because it's a much bigger building.
But you're tying us down, because if you go back to the drawing, then you're saying that this is the footprint of the existing. Have you got a footprint of the existing? If you're telling me that is bigger, I mean, I can't approve this. You're telling me that you've judged it on that rather than that, correct?
Judge on this.
Yeah, on the new one. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Not judged it on the existing building. Now, I can agree with you on an existing building that you could turn around and say you can get 3 or 4 bedrooms, but that for me is over bulk already. So I cannot, hand on heart, say that I agree with this.
I think what you need to decide is, can you fit 8 parking spaces, which is, members can't ask for any more than that because I wouldn't be able to sustain a refusal reason. So are members comfortable on the basis you'd want to do maximum parking standards, you can fit 8 parking spaces? And the other question is, are members comfortable that you can fit the number of flats proposed into a building on that site without it being so...
But we can't break this down. If you're saying to me, you ask me 2 questions on 1 planning application, if you give me 2 planning applications and I say about the parking, I say I agree. But I cannot agree on the second part, which you have now made a building, which is not even plans, but some sort of shape has occurred, and said that there's going to be X amount of properties on there. And I cannot agree with that. If you say it's on the existing building, then I can agree with that. and there could be slight modifications that because we're saying that there's a building line, blah, 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 but I cannot agree on that bulk.
Well, Councillor Flynn, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to...
Sorry, I missed it.
If I may, just ask officers, you mentioned about a 10% threshold on this. Could I ask how close we are to breaching that? Because I could imagine a scenario where we approve this tonight and then the applicant comes back in about a year's time. And if we're right on the cusp at the moment on the 10% threshold in the intervening period, that someone could have come in and done the same thing and tipped us over the threshold. So what could...
Next one would be refused. If we're that close, the next one would go, as happened in Swakey's Road. But I don't know how close we are here.
I'd be interested to know generally how close we are, though.
Maybe in the report somewhere. Is it 7.8 I see as a number? Okay, the best number I can give you is 7.8% would be, but that includes the development, the big development of Harefield Place, which we would argue would have to come out.
I don't think you could include Harefield Place
because it's hidden away.
Because
and it's also way out.
And it wasn't originally a family dwelling house, which is part of the.
So we're well below.
Prerequisites.
I think the answer is we're well below. I think which reassures your answer. Councillor Duncan was sorry, and I've got Councillor Morse as well. I saw your hand in Councillor Duncan first because I know she was first.
Thank you very much, Chair. I do have some concerns and appreciate the concerns of colleagues on the other side of the table. Normally, when you are proposing something in outline and it's this close to adjoining residential properties, one would hope to see the more detail. And in fact, it's quite legitimate for us to ask for more detail so that we can be satisfied that on the more detailed matters that we would have to look at when details come in, that we are not breaching it at this stage. It's all very well to say these are illustrative plans, but I can tell this committee that I personally, from my own experience, fought an appeal when I was a planning officer here and lost it because the illustrative plans showed very clearly the siting of the proposed building. So there is some history for that that I know of personally. I don't know what more recent decisions are. We would need to look at what is the effect on any side windows at number 64, because we're proposing a deeper building here than previously, and it's also closer to those. Also, if we're talking about if we're also talking about the impact of this development, I appreciate that this is a road with very large houses set in very open grounds, and in fact we've had a refusal earlier where it's going to break up that. Now we're talking about a development which is from this plan 2 metres, the front of this, the windows to the front of these flats will be 2 metres, 2.2. That's the size of a fence panel, not very large, and I would say that that isn't the kind of amenity that one has with properties in this road. So for a start, one could say that that was out of character. It's quite tight, it's quite dense development. Now there are other parts of the borough and those closer to town centres, etc., where we have flats, and we've seen examples of that, much denser development, and these kind of distances are acceptable. But that's introducing that here, it appears, for the first time. Also, if we could just go back to this plan. If we look at this 45-degree angle here. We take this as 45 degrees here, like this. Is it breaching this line or not? It's all very well to say this is just illustrative at this point, but we need to know those things. We need to know, is that window adjoining? And so, although in principle, obviously, it's a residential development, it's on a residential site, there's nothing against the principle of it. I would certainly feel a lot happier if we had more detail and we could be assured of the effect on adjoining properties, adjoining windows, openings, anything that might impact on the amenity of adjoining residents, as well as this setback from a car park. I would not like to be a fencing panel's distance away from my neighbours' cars. Thank you.
Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like Councillor Duggins and Councillor Higgins, I'm also of the view this is like a stealth application almost, and I actually take the view I'm reluctant to agree this without we actually get some more detail on the outline of the building, because there are significant issues here, I think. The last point is, we're on the 10% rule. Where are we regards if we approve something, an outline, 4%, but it's not built, and then another application comes in, which is, do we actually take the outline application and apply that to the rule? We do.
I'll double check. Yes, I'm getting nods that we do. So once we put an outline on this, that takes the percentage up. Okay. It's not about them built, because we had this argument in Swakeley's Road not that long ago.
I was not clear on that point. I thought I should clarify.
No,
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Morgan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I've also got deep reservations about this at the moment. I'm looking at the plans and I'm concerned about the shadowing effect on number 68. Comes 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the evening. The size of that building is going to be overshadowing number 68 quite massively.
Problem is, what we don't have, of course, is the size of the existing.
We don't have anything to.
We don't know how much of the existing is there as well, do we? Well, the existing is a fairly substantial building. I think I know where I'm going with this, but Councillor Oswald.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. I think it's pretty obvious that we're not totally comfortable with this because we're not quite sure about the details. I know this is only an outline planning application, and if we did push this through tonight, then later on we'd get the reserve matters and we'd have a better idea of what's going on. Chairman, could I move a deferment so that we can, that's what I was trying to say, move deferment and so we get more detail with this. And I mean, it's also to close to this, any overshadowing as well. Janet and I were just looking at that, the way the sun's going to move. So
I think
I'm going to move deferment.
Yeah, I think that makes that is a sensible way forward, because the danger is we'll tie ourselves to a block that could cause us problems. Do I have a seconder for that? Oh, I've got a selection of them. As Councillor Higgins led the debate on this side, I'll take that. All those in favour of deferring this one, let me have. Thank you very much. More detailed plans to enable the outline application to be fully considered. I mean, they've got to show that the outline works. They don't have to show us everything, which is enough to say it works. Right? Well, let's see what comes back. Item 10, 15 Thornhill Road. This is another part-built, part-enforcement type scenario. Dormer windows this time.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is a detached chalet-style building. I think it's probably best to go to the...
Go to the pictures.
Yeah, okay. So, this is the existing building. This is the unauthorised dormer that was built on the back, also pokes out on the other side as well. Yeah, there you go. We've served an enforcement notice on this, and we've also refused and had an appeal dismissed for the retention of the dormer, and that appeal proposed an extension to the roof. So that extended the property and built what we call a half-hip roof. So basically, they kept the dormer the same size in that application. They increased the size of the roof, so made it a wider roof with a ridge and a half-hip. And the idea was they'd hide to a great extent that hide the existing dormer. However, they didn't do it enough. Obviously, you can still see it from neighbouring gardens and from the rear, and the inspector dismissed the appeal on the application. However, in dismissing the appeal, he didn't object to the idea of increasing the size of the roof and introducing his half-hip style roof at the front. What his problem was retaining the dormer as built. So this application, if I go back to, I'll show you another photo, that's it at the back. So if I go back to the plans, what is now proposed, so they've actually, the one that, the previous application actually had less of a hip, so there's only a marginal sort of half hip at the ends here. So he has increased the hip, even though the inspector didn't think that was necessarily a problem. But the main difference is that this application has reduced the dormer significantly. So it we think it addresses those plans. Actually, I think you see it better. You can see it better here. So we think, given the inspector's decision that he was okay with the existing roof, we now have a policy compliant situation where there's enough set-in from the sides and from the ridge and from the eaves to meet our HDAS guidance on dormer extensions. So hence we're recommending approval. Thank you.
Before we start on this one, the officer report condition 1, which was giving 3 years, has been amended in the addendum to come back with the 3 months and 6 months. The head of planning will be seeking delegated authority in line with the previous application before last to consult with legal to make sure the reasoning behind that is absolutely robust if we approve this. Right, Councillor Morgan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Looking at the plans, it looks like what they've done here is actually just increase the height of the roof so that the dormer becomes subordinate. Are they just trying to get around?
I think what they should be reducing. Basically, the inspector has indicated they can increase the roof, so they have increased the roof. But I think they have made the dormer smaller. Have they definitely made that dormer smaller?
Yeah, because the ridge.
Page 77. Page 77 of the report gives you some dimensions to help you.
The ridge height hasn't changed, so that is still the same height.
Basically, they've reduced the size of the dormer. Right, are we gone as far as we can with this one? Yes, Councillor Higgins.
I don't like what it still looks awful to me.
The like is not where we are.
We're not here to about liking stuff. Unfortunately, I suppose in some ways I will go with officer's recommendation on this.
Councillor Oswald, would you?
I'll second that, Chairman.
With a similar sentiment, no doubt.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got the report as varied by the addendum and as varied by the verbal variation I read out. All those in favour, please clearly show. Thank you very much. Right. We're now going to move to the last item on the agenda, item 12, which is changed of use application, and then I will move back to item 11 when Councillor Morgan leaves us. Right.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the change of use of the ground floor units at 514A Victoria Road for isolip from A1 retail to a D1 non-residential institution to provide a children's nursery, and it is proposed that the nursery will accommodate children between the ages of 3 months and 5 years. Whilst council policy would usually seek to retain A1 use in this retail location, the proposed development will provide a childcare facility which is deemed a valuable community asset for residents in the surrounding area. The site achieves an acceptable level of off-street parking provision and is suitably located given the strong public transport links. The location of the site within a designated local centre and given the site's location within a local centre and strong public transport links, it's a good location for this sort of use. Therefore, the development is considered to comply with relevant policy and is recommended for approval. There is a similar consent elsewhere. It's already been implemented that has been extremely successful. I understand the applicants are the same for this one.
I think the elsewhere is about 3 doors along.
Yeah.
I think it's very, very closely to it, yeah.
That's the unit in question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
was formerly used for a car business, or not been formally used for a long time. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I distinctly remember, actually, the previous application that's referred to coming before the committee. I'd just be intrigued to know, I mean, I am instinctively very supportive of nurseries of this sort, but just in terms of the hours, which seem a little bit on the long side to me, whether they are the same as the hours of operation of the nursery a few doors down. And if not, if they are longer, maybe it would make sense to have the same hours in terms of operation.
It would seem to have a logic to it. Neil, do we know?
I can't actually confirm that categorically tonight, but we can check and make sure they
I think we can perhaps give some delegated authority to the head of planning. I'm sure is about to make me a sensible suggestion.
Yeah, if you could give me delegated authority, it would be quite straightforward for officers to check the condition on the other business and then to just mirror it, yes.
I don't think there's any logic for us having two different conditions unless anyone can tell me why we should. Councillor Morse?
Mr. Chairman, in the previous application, we actually got in it pollution levels in the outside road traffic. I now notice, if you look at the plans, we do have an issue with fresh air as a filter, and it calls it a partial filter, because with a nursery, okay, what should happen? The children get a choice of indoor or outdoor play, so but you can choose to go in, right? Have we able to condition what this filter's doing in terms of there's some quite it could be taken in high, so I think they will be reduced, but this is a question I'm asking of planners. Are we able to actually specify what we're filtering out?
Neil, I think you're getting this one.
I certainly don't see why not.
Your boss has just sent it your way. That was neat. I noted that floated straight across the table. While Neil's looking at that, Councillor Stead, sorry, do you want to...
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a thought that comparing this with a nursery that's a few doors away, wouldn't it be better to have the times staggered anyway, so that not all the people aren't arriving or leaving at the same time?
On doing that anyway. I think what people are looking at is 8:30 at night. Just looks a bit on the late side. That was, I think it's just an error rather than anything else.
Neil, it's page 106.
Thank you, Councillor Oswald, for your help with the...
To condition 3 is compliance with supporting documents, and that includes the nursery collection and drop-off timetable, and that's the staggering.
Well, where's EPU's comments? Air quality. Oh. Not a lot.
Well, they've suggested a condition which we've put in, but you want
to... no.
I think the only way we can...
Yeah, hang on.
We could...
I think the sensible suggestion with this, I think it's probably okay, but I think the sensible suggestion the head of planning has just given me is EPU are the experts on this stuff and not us. Could I give the head of planning delegated authority to go away, talk to EPU, if there is something else that needs to go in to strengthen this report, to get it to add it in. If not, we go as we are. Does that make sense? Yeah, good. Councillor Duncan?
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask whether we would want to restrict the use to nursery within D1 class, or whether we're quite happy that it is unrestricted?
It's our standard practice on nurseries to do that, exactly the condition you're proposing, because that use class has other uses we wouldn't want. So I'm very grateful for the suggestion.
Have we restricted it? We haven't.
No, we haven't.
No, right. In it goes.
If I could suggest that we...
In it goes.
Thank you.
Thank you. That should have been in there, because it's valid. Anything else on this one? We're good. Councillor Flynn?
Just on the basis of those amendments, just to say I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Good. Second, Councillor Oswald, thank you very much. All those in favour, please clearly show. Thank you very much. That one's approved. Good night, John. That's your evening done. We may not be that far behind you. Right. Councillor Morgan rapidly leaves us so that we can begin work. Agenda item 11, 68 Norwich Road. This follows a theme of an evening, this one does. Yeah. Somebody's built something we didn't like and is now rebuilding it, more in a version that we do like. That's not the officer presentation, that's just my summary of it.
Part retention of a single-storey side extension and replacement of pitch roof over the rear and a retained side elevation with flat roof, if that makes any sense. So this is the existing. So they built this large side wraparound extension, so it wraps around and joins in with the rear extension here. It's got quite high eaves and a pitch roof. This was dismissed on appeal. An application to retain this was refused and dismissed on appeal, and now they're proposing to remove a large section of the side extension, all the bit down the front to the back, and they want to keep. Sorry, it's easy if I look behind me. They want to keep this bit of side extension. It's the only bit that's been retained out of the footprint. So all this goes, and they replace the pitched roof over the rear and side extension with a flat one.
On that plan, you'll point to which bits are going.
So this is the existing. This is the as-built footprint. So this is the side wraparound side extension. So if you flip over to here, you can see that all this bit of extension has been removed, and it's just this bit poking out at the back that is retained of the side element of the extension, and they've lowered the height of the roof, and we think that's sufficient for us to recommend approval.
Councillor Oswald?
Yeah, I'll move officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Higgins. All those in favour, please show.
And the addendum.
Oh, hang on.
And the addendum.
That might be
do members want an extra condition that requires them to make good that elevation?
Yeah.
So, in case that, although obviously they're halfway there, I would wish them to kind of paint and render and make good. And we can condition that.
I think that's a very sensible additional suggestion.
Yeah, return it to its original condition. Or close to as possible.
Let's make it clear. So with that addition, we have a proposer and a seconder.
With the addendum.
In the addendum, all those in favour, please clearly show. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, sir.
5